Hi, and welcome to the Rags to Riches show with myself, Terry Blackburn. Now, today's guest is one of the most experienced guests we've had to date, a guy called John Howard. To give you an idea, he's been investing in property around about 40 years. In that time, he's been involved in either the sale or purchase of almost 4,000 units. He owns his own bond. He's got his own JV fund. He's been involved in various different property deals from small, medium, large, up to, I think a recent development was around about 150 units in Ipswich. Really experienced guy, knows his stuff. I'm sure there's loads of key learnings and lessons from the episode that you can take and apply to your own property journey. So welcome to the show, John Howard.
Thank you, Terry. No pressure there then, is there? Thank you very much for that build up. Actually, I think it's 43 years, you know. I can't believe it. Where has the time gone?
Wow.
Where has the time gone? God.
Definitely.
And you know, I've made a few mistakes during that time, but I've done okay. I could have done better, like everyone, but you learn more from your mistakes, Terry, than you do from your successes, and that's what I think everyone needs to appreciate. And everyone in property will make mistakes. You know, you show me someone in property that doesn't make a mistake, I'll show you a liar.
Yeah, I think you're right there. But a lot of people don't really shout about or post about the things that go wrong, right? They only focus on...
No, I find a lot of people are a little bit like gamblers. You know, they only tell you when they win. And I go and speak at these events, and everyone is so nice, you know. It's so pleasant and so nice, but you do come away thinking sometimes, Terry, my God, what have I done wrong? This guy's made $1 million on this, 1.5 on that. You know, they only tell you the truth. Probably not the truth. I always take 50% of what people say. If I don't know someone, I always take 50% of what they say as probably about right. And I think that a lot of people go to these events and come back feeling very deflated because they've spoken to someone that's done this and done that. Well, they might have done, but I always say to them, look, take 50% of what someone says to you if you don't know them, and it's probably about right, you know.
I think that's good advice, you know, certainly from someone who's been around the block in property. I've found that from the networking that I've done and the people I speak up to online, you know, a lot of them are full of, we can swear on this podcast, full of shit. Yeah, so they just see and then a lot of people mislead.
Yeah, and Terry, there's some that genuinely have done that. You know, and I'm not saying there aren't, but I just think that it's very easy, especially as a newcomer to property, to be sucked in by some people who perhaps haven't done as much as they say they've done. And I think you just need to keep a level head about it all. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to start the show, and I think it's a key learning point for a lot of the listeners straight away there. Thanks, John. So what we'd like to talk about, John, on the show is your career so far, broken down into 3 parts. The start being just how you got into property, how it all came about. The middle, which is the exciting part, the growth part, which is what everyone likes to hear about, how you've went from 0 units to 4,000 over this time. Some key learnings and lessons throughout that period as well. And then just the last part is the current, which is what your attention is on right now, what you're looking at going forward. You did mention just before press record that you're definitely not done yet, and you're still actively buying, which I love. So maybe just a little bit about the current and what you focus.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So we start at the start, shall we?
Just how you got into it. That'd be great.
Okay. So I've been fortunate, you know, and sometimes you're better to be lucky than you are good. If you get, is that the right word? I think someone said that. So my father was a greengrocer in Felixstowe, small town in Suffolk, and I was very fortunate that when he was 60 odd. He decided he wanted to be an estate agent in the same town as he's a greengrocer. Now, the problem with that is people know you, small town, people know he's a greengrocer, not as an estate agent. So what do you know about valuing houses? So it's a bit of a problem, to be honest with you. It was a bit of a problem. But he bought a very small little business, didn't need the money, to be fair, led a pretty modest life, didn't need to make a lot of money out of the estate agency, but something he's always wanted to do. So he bought this estate agency. I was at school 10, 12 years old. And in the holidays, I used to hold the tape, because in those days you had a tape. You know, when you went round someone's house to measure up, you had a wasn't an infrared. Yeah, exactly. It was a tape. You needed two people, in other words. So I used to go and help him. He was a one-man band, really. And he didn't do very well at it. To be fair, he wasn't a great estate agent. Nice man, good businessman, I would describe him as. And of course, when you sit around the kitchen, the dining room table at lunchtime, in those days, people used to go home for lunch, by the way. So when I eventually started work with him when I was 17, properly. And you'd walk home for lunch. You know, that's what people, the office was closed, you walk home for lunch. That's how bloody old I am, to be fair. Anyway, so I joined him when I was 17. He'd been ill in hospital, and there was really no business because he'd almost closed it because he was in hospital. He came out of hospital. I joined him when he was 17, when I was 17, so I could learn to drive. I soon realised after a few weeks that, hey, this is all right, selling a property and getting for someone else and getting a bit of commission, but it's far, why aren't we bloody buying and selling them ourselves? It was a natural, for me, it was a natural thing. He went back into hospital after 4 months, so I was left to run the business on my own, basically, with a lady called Mrs. Leader. Now, Mrs. Leader was a very nice, very bossy, very nice lady, but she used to give me spelling tests. She gave me a spelling test every morning because my spelling was so bad. I mean, what's that all about? And also, I used to stammer, so I hated answering the phone, and I would never make a phone call. Not a good thing if you're an estate agent, to be fair. Not a great start, is it? Anyway, so I battled on through, keeping the business going until he came back out of hospital. And then I managed to save a little bit of money. And my mother, bless her heart, who's still alive, 95, she's still going. She lent me a little bit of money, and I managed to buy, and I borrowed some money from the bank. So on my 18th birthday, I'd managed to buy 2 flats and in a building. I bought them off a developer who we used to deal with. And it was the rump end of a deal. He just wanted to get rid of the last 2. And in those days, well, not so much now, there aren't many what they call sitting tenants. With sitting tenants, you'd pay 50% of the open market value because you couldn't get them out. They were there on a low rent. But I managed to sell one of the flats to the tenant for 75% of the open market price. I bought it for 50, sold it for 75. That way, I wasn't in for much on the other one, which I then sold on later on, and then moved on and bought another property. And what I would say, if you're going to borrow any money off family, especially, always do it on a business basis. So always do it on a professional basis, so that if you've got any siblings, they don't get the hump about you borrowing the money cheap off your mum, dad, or whoever it might be. If you're in I was in a fortunate position that, you know, they lent me a small amount of money. My dad wouldn't, because he didn't want me to lose the money, funnily enough, but my mum did. And then with the profit my mother made, she bought herself a new kitchen because my dad was too tight to buy one for her. So everyone was a winner. Terry, everyone was a winner. And of course, if you get the money back to people at a good interest rate and a bit of share of the profit, guess what? She wanted to lend the money again. So we did it a few times. So I was very fortunate that I had that start in life, and not everyone has that. And I admire people that have no start in life whatsoever, in no help, and do well, and being successful is relative to where you start from, I think, sometimes, in your background. And I was fortunate to have that background. I don't deny that. So
just to jump in, John, what was it about property? So buying properties at 18 isn't, the norm. A lot of people aren't. A lot of people are too busy getting drunk.
Well, to be honest with you, Terry, I was a bit worried because I was academically, I was useless. I wasn't at sport. I was quite a good sportsman at school. So although I stammered and all the rest of it, I that helped. But actually, I was a bit worried because what the hell was I going to do? Because I wasn't very bright. I didn't have any real qualifications at all. I came out of school with a couple of O levels or something. And I worked very hard for that, by the way. So it wasn't as if I was being lazy. So I had to do something. And I think, what you've got to remember, a lot of entrepreneurs and people, not just property, but other people, sometimes they're not that academic sometimes, but they have a different ability. And I think it's, they say you're slow at developing something, don't they? But so I got to, when I was a year later, my father still wasn't well, so he decided to sell the business to someone. So he sold the business for peanuts, really. The guy then said, would I stay on as a manager? I said I would. So I thought that's handy. Then I thought, well, actually, if he wants me as a manager, I should try and buy it myself, really. So the deal fell through. So then I bought it then off my father, who didn't want to sell it to me because he didn't want me to fail, bless his heart. But so I bought it, changed the name, trebled the turnover, made it a lot better, came up with some modern ideas like, we made it like a self-service, and you walk in and you can just pick the details up, because in those days everyone had a filing cabinet, and it was like a big secret, whose house was on the market. Well, I did okay. I didn't do brilliantly, but I kept buying and dealing, and I sold the business when I was 24 to my manager. I brought a manager in who had a bit of money, always handy. And his father had a bit of money, and I managed to persuade him to buy the business. So that's handy. So when I was 24, I had a big break, really, because although I was doing okay, you need a backer sometimes. You need, if you want to push on, you need to find money, really. And I met a guy called Robert Boyce, and Robert Boyce was he was a poultry farmer, but he's also a true entrepreneur. And we got together, and he was in his 50s, very wealthy. In fact, I still deal with his family now. His son, Andrew, I still deal with him now, which is lovely, 35 years later, which is nice. And we still do deals together. And he backed me, and we started doing some bigger deals. And we did a tower block in Ipswich of 73 flats. We bought it. It was existing tower block with sitting tenants in. We worked the tenants, got them out, sold it. And we made... and this is going back 1986, we made 987,000 after interest on that deal. So
wow.
that was obviously good.
Is that at age 24, John? Is that right?
Yeah, 25 by then, probably 25. And then we moved, and so then we moved on to bigger, to do other deals like that around the country and so on. And I did very well between the age of 20 and 30. And then the property recession came when I was 30. Another property recession came, and everyone struggled a bit. I bought a big country house with 80 acres and all the rest of it when I was 26, 27. But by the time I was 30, I needed to readdress that situation, shall we say. And actually, I sold it and moved where I am now. So I've been where I'm now over 30 years, which is nice. I've got a nice country house with, all the trappings, if you like, but it's not as big as the one I had before when I was 30. So that's a bit, but anyway, I haven't bothered moving again. It's very nice and comfortable, so I'm not complaining at all. So yeah, so when I was, the property recession, early 90s, really tough time for everyone. We survived it mainly because I spread my properties throughout the UK, really. So and obviously coming out of recession is a fantastic time, because that's when you really make the money. So if you've got some money left, or you can get hold of money coming out of a property recession, you can make some serious money. And I did okay. In fact, we've always done better out when there's some turbulence and blood on the street, if you like, Terry, than at any other time. Yeah. So, when things are really hot, when it's too easy, there's too many people doing it, and they work on too smaller margins. And that's the problem we've had in the last few years, really, is I'm far better as a developer investor when things are tough, because I hopefully know what to do to get out of trouble quicker and easier than perhaps other people, and pick up bargains along the way. So I'm better in a tough market than I am in the market we've currently got or had. I think it's going to get tougher, Terry. It's going to get tougher.
I was just going to jump in there. See, the current market that we're in is a lot of, it is harder to find below market value stuff. How are you finding this in comparison to any other tough or hot times during your career?
Well, I think the one thing, Terry, I have to say is that, of course, there's thousands and thousands of people who are in the property market now and want to get in it. And that's the difference between when I started. You go to a dinner party and you said you're a property developer, and it was quite unusual. Oh, now you go to a dinner party and everybody's telling you how well they do in property. Yeah. And my wife says, please don't say you're a property developer. I said, well, What
What
did
else
it
can
call
you
me?
say?
He said, yes. He said, because everyone will just start talking to you and telling you how well they're doing and how many properties they've gotten, which is what happens. Happens. They don't want any advice because they know everything, of course. They're all experts. No, so it has changed. The competition is vast now. It's huge, and we end up doing more sophisticated deals, the ones that perhaps other people can't do, or not many people can do, because to make the same margins as we made 20, 30 years ago, it's very difficult. The margins, what people are willing to do the deal for, and profit-wise, has come right down compared to where it used to be. And that's difficult. And there's thousands of banks now, of course, Terry, willing to lend, which there wasn't in the old days. You couldn't lend, you couldn't go and, there must be 1,000, 2,000 small property banks in the UK lending, I'd imagine. And in my day, you'd had the clearers, the NatWest, Barclays, all those, and that was about it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. And is there any sort of emerging strategies or anything in particular that you're focusing on? I know you mentioned that the more complicated deals. Is anything in particular that you're focusing on at the moment, John, or is it a bit of everything? Or
well, Terry, one thing I'd say to you is there's nothing new in property. All these so-called strategies that these educators come up with, there's nothing new. We've been doing it. I've been doing it for the last 40 odd years, and people have been doing it for 100 years before then. And so is everyone else. And all my friends at my age go, what the hell's all this about? We've been doing that for, so it's all changed. So there's nothing new. There's nothing new in property. But what I would say is you take the PD, you take permissive development on office to residential. We were in on that very early, like a lot of other developers. But you can only be in it for so long before everyone's, my friend Ranjan's told bloody everybody what to do. So what's happened is, the market now for PD, office to residential, is saturated with people who can afford to do it, because it's quite a simple, it's a good way of cutting your teeth in property development, to be honest with you. So what happens is, no one knows about it much. So people like myself, Nicholas Warwick did very well, and many other people did very well for the first few years with PD. And now everyone's jumped in. So now we're on to something different. We do, we're constantly trying to find different deals, different things to do. I personally think commercial property is in a property recession at the moment. So you've got the residential market that's hot as hell, and you've got the commercial market, especially vacant commercial stock, which is on its knees. And I've just written a book at Christmas, because I don't like Christmas much, to be fair. So I wrote a book on commercial property, which no doubt comes out in a month or two. But I'm also doing a seminar. One of my seminars this year, I'm doing my seminars is on commercial property, because that's a big angle that a lot of people haven't appreciated, in my view. And I think that I'm not saying it's often for very first time property investors commercial, because it's harder to get funding and so on. But once you've got some property, then commercial, there's massive opportunities, not just commercial to residential, but retaining some commercial as well, and lots of different angles to it. And I've done quite a lot of commercial, over my career.
Okay, that's an interesting one. Not many people are saying that, and like you say, because online they're focusing on the shiny penny stuff, aren't they? And they're focusing on the good and nothing else. No, thanks for that advice. I think it's good for the listeners to hear that as well, John. So started off a couple of units gradually, and sold your business. You got into business with someone who funded you. Then you started doing these huge deals. I mean, 900k in 1986 is equivalent to, well, at least treble now, maybe, like that. That's
probably. But you know what? But what you do? But most people, of course, you make the money, and you've already, if you're ambitious, you already spent the money on the next deal. So, okay, you might take a small amount out, but you've reinvested that money in the next deal, or two more deals, or three more deals, if you're ambitious. And in those days, that's because, also don't forget, you couldn't borrow the sort of levels you can these days, percentage wise. So most banks would only lend you 50-50 in those days.
Was it? Okay.
50%. So, some might do 60, but that was really maximum. And they'd expect you to put money into the bill costs as well, which sometimes now you don't have to. So it has changed. It has changed dramatically. Yeah.
And then from that point, what was the strategy then? What did you then get into? I know you've mentioned commercial, but have you done pretty much everything? And is there any key highlights?
What we did do, we went around the country buying tower blocks and refurbishing and selling to first-time buyers, because in those days, a lot of the local authorities had vacant tower blocks they were going to blow up, which cost £500,000 to blow up. But we would give, they would give them to us, or give us, or we'd pay them something for them, and turn them into first-time buyer properties, homes for first-time buyers. So we did that, and then in the early 90s, the market crashed, and I started doing a lot of listed buildings. So office, here we go, offices to residential. So a lot of solicitors' offices and things like that used to be in town centres, not so much now. And they used to be in older properties, which were originally houses. And we put them back, so we just put them back into what they were before. So that was a good angle. And then other people jump on that a little bit and so on. And then we moved on to doing, converting. I counted the other day at one of my seminars, we counted how many different types of conversions I've done, and it was 15. Don't ask me to name them all now, but from barns, piggeries, water towers, hotels, maltings buildings, workhouses in the old days they used to be called. What else? I can't remember. Schools. Anyway, church. We've done a chapel. In fact, I've just bought the chapel at auction for £65,000, Terry. So, when people say, oh, I can't get into auctions because I can't buy anything cheap enough. There you go, £65,000.
So you're not just. I quite like that when I was sort of researching you before we sort of got talking online. I quite like that you're still regularly doing the small deals. It's not just these huge multi-million-pound tower blocks, like you say. You're also doing the small stuff as well. Is there any reason behind that, or
no? Well, it's just fun, really. And my stepdaughter now, Tiffany's in the business. So that's that. To be fair, that was one of her. She looks after the auction side. So we buy a lot after the auctions. So we try to. And I've just arranged a couple of revolving facilities with banks to buy during, but also after auction, because I think the auction market is going to really come into its own. So with auctions are a great barometer for the overall property market. So when the auction market starts to slow down, it goes from an average sale rate of say 75% down to 50%, then you know that the normal residential market is going to follow 6 and 9 months later. And the other way around, when the auction market starts picking up, you know that the residential property market is going to follow. So I think we're in for a bit of turbulence, and things are going to get tougher. And so for us, auctions are very important. The last 4 deals I bought have all been after the auctions. So so we've gone from. So we literally will look at most things. So the last 4, what are the last 4 lots we bought at auction? A couple of £1 million on 20 part finished houses in Birmingham, a care home in Essex to convert back into residential, a little chapel, and now we're in the process of buying. It's taken me 43 years to buy a deal in Scotland. I did try in the 90s, but failed dismally. But I'm back, so I'm trying to buy. So we're buying a part of a housing estate that's gone bust up in Scotland at the moment. So that'll be good fun. So like you said, I'm not done yet really. So someone asked, who's the? I'm just trying to think of his name. The actor. What was it? Eddie Murphy. Someone asked Eddie Murphy a few years ago. They said, "Oh, what have you been doing all these years? You haven't had a hit record for a hit film for ages." Yeah. And he said, "I've been working." And pay. He doesn't need to pay his mortgage, does he? I'm sure, but paying the school fees, paying the mortgage, and that's a bit like property, sometimes. In as much that you can't always be doing high profile deals. The deal we did 2 or 3 years ago, which we're just selling the last few now in Ipswich, where I live. We bought a building that was had been started, so the skeleton had been built, 18 stories high, and we spent 26 million finishing it, and now we're selling them and all the rest of it. And you can't do deals like that every week, and you probably don't want to. and having the spread and buying a chapel for 65,000 for me is it's not one I've got to worry too much about, or anybody else would have to worry too much about, probably, to be fair. But there's good margin in. I look at the margin, not the value, not the price I'm paying. So I look at the profit level. So if I can buy a chapel and I can make a 40% return on it, great. You could buy something for 30 million and lose money if you're not careful. So it's all about the deal. It's all about the profit level in that deal. And I'm not ashamed to buy a property for whatever, 30,000 if I had to, if it was a good deal, or one at potentially 15, 20 million. If the margins are there, the margins are there, and that's how I look at it. Also the other way I look at it is that the chapel, the profit on the chapel might pay. You've got to look at it in terms of monetary value. The chapel, the profit from the chapel. That's if it goes well. By the way, if it's a disaster, we can't get planning on it, then it'll be back in an auction somewhere and probably lose money. Resell it. But hopefully we'll get planning for residential on it. But I mean, the profit from that will pay for, might buy a new car or might buy. So you've got to look at it like that as well. That's how I look at it anyway. I don't look at it as I don't want to do something because it's too cheap. I don't look at it like that.
No, I like that. Again, I think that's great advice, and not getting too carried away. I think you could easily just focus on the huge deals that a lot of people can't even afford to get into because of the level that you're operating on. But you're letting the numbers guide you, and if it meets your criteria in terms of a profit margin, then you would go for it. I think that's a real good approach. And did you ever find yourself getting carried away, as in you were getting on all these big deals and you thought, I'm not even going to look at those little ones, or you always continue with the little ones?
I have to admit, when I was 26 years old and I had a Bentley Turbo with a driver and a Porsche and a Range Rover, I was probably getting myself to the point of being a bit of a prat.
I think everyone can relate to that. If you were making 900 grand a year in 1986, 26, you're going to do it.
But I did pull myself back from that situation a little bit, and in fact, buying, I got involved and I bought a share in Cambridge United, and we talked about that earlier. And I spent 18 years at Cambridge United as a director and shareholder, and 15 great years. We were very close. There's 4 of us that owned the club between us, and it was an amazing time. And of course, I was very, I'd get off the team coach at a stadium somewhere, and they'd want my autograph, and I had to explain to them that I wasn't a player. That you don't want my autograph. I'm not a player, because I was the same age as, or younger than some of the players. But there we go. So good times. But I mean, I think the answer is you need to be humble and keep your feet on the ground, and everyone's lost money in property, have been at it a long time, and that's a very humbling experience in any case. But I mean, I just think that and there's a really good saying, and money shouts, wealth whispers. And I think you look at some of the most successful people, they don't go shouting about what they've got. You don't see them sitting in their Ferrari on LinkedIn or something, do you? They don't do it. And I learned from an early age, people don't like it. Why do it? It's not my style these days. Put it like that.
Yeah, I think that I've just wrote that down. Money shouts, wealth whispers. Love that. Never heard that before. Thanks for sharing. Just out of interest, have you got a sporting background? I know you said you were good at sports when you were younger, but like to buy Cambridge United, do you support them? Are you a big footy fan? Or
every football director is a frustrated footballer. That's what they say. A footballer that wasn't good enough. And that's absolutely right. We all were. And the one thing you learn with early on as a director of a football club is that most business sense goes out the window. But apart from that, is that you back them or you sack them. So we had David Rushton was our chairman at Cambridge for a little while, nice old boy. And he said, John, you back them or you sack them. So you back the manager until you decide that day he has to be sacked. and we've I think I sacked about 10 managers in the end. It's a tricky old game.
Cutthroat, yeah, it is, man.
It's cutthroat. It's cutthroat. But I've never worried about. I always think people tend to appreciate if you're going to have fallout. I try not to fall out with anyone, but you're better off just to be honest and say, look, I'm sorry, it's not working out. We're best to go our separate ways, than you are to continue to try and work with someone that isn't isn't capable, or you just don't get, or just for whatever reason you can't get on with. And I think people appreciate the honesty sometimes, rather than go for the painful experience of weeks and weeks of torture, which is what happened. And the ultimate and the outcome's the same.
Yeah, I completely agree. Sometimes having the wrong people in the wrong positions, they're cancerous, aren't they? Certainly in my business, I've had people like that in the past, where as soon as you cut them out or you remove them, the business flourishes, and you don't actually.
And other people around you go, oh, well, that's much better now. Well, why didn't you tell me that earlier? But the one bit of advice I always give people is that, when you're talking about getting consultants in, when you have to get consultants in for bigger projects and so on, is always surround yourself with the best people you can find and the best people you can afford, because the best people only cost a little bit more than an average person. And actually pick the best. It'll make you look a lot better, apart from anything else. And some people are always concerned that they're going to look better than me. Well, I hope the people I work with are better than me, because the only difference between them and me, they're brighter than I am. They're more educated than I am, and they're specialists in their field. The one thing they don't have is balls quite often to do it themselves. They'll be handsomely paid for the advice they give you, but they don't want to do it themselves. You're the captain of the ship. You make that ultimate decision. They can't do what you do. But they can support you and advise you, and that's what it's about.
Really sorry, my batteries just went low, and I thought my charger was plugged in, John. I'm really sorry. 1 second.
Don't worry.
Sorry, mate.
That's all right.
You can tell this isn't scripted. There you go. Sorry, mate. Well, my charger is plugged in, but anyway. I think what I was going to ask on that is there anything that you learned from the experience at Cambridge running an organisation like that, a football club, that helped you with property, or benefited you in any way, as in managing all them people or that type of environment? Yeah,
I think the great thing about a football club, and about being having directors on being a board of directors, is that property is very insular, and all my friends, really, most of my friends over the years have been property related, because we work together, or they're other property dealers, or they're this or that, all in property. So when you're thrown into a situation with 4 other board members, quite often, or 5, all from different backgrounds, it gives you a really different angle about life in general. It's not all about property. There's people made money in all sorts of different areas, and it's interesting to learn from those people and how they've done it, because it's a totally different business to the one you're in. And football, of course, is even just a complete mad business, all on its own. And I've met some through the football. I've met some fascinating people when you go to other clubs, and successful people over the years, and some who you kept in touch with. I sat next to Yuri Geller. He was involved in Exeter for a little while. Excuse me. And he sat down at the dinner table before the match, and he said, "I suppose you want me to do this?" And I sat next to him, and he just bent a spoon. Just think, I didn't actually ask you to do it, but it was quite impressive. So there's lots of stuff. I've got loads and loads of stories.
The experiences, definitely.
Who I've met over the years, as most people have, I suppose. Most people met a lot of people, but Robert Maxwell was a bit scary, I have to say. He was at Oxford United. He took over the Oxford United for a little while, and he was scary.
Yeah.
Very unpleasant. Didn't say a lot to anyone, and what he did say wasn't very pleasant.
Yeah.
I always think there's no need to be like that. Whoever you are, whoever successful, and he lost everything in the end, didn't he? But I mean, whoever you are, I just think you need to treat everyone the same. As I always said to my stepchildren when they were little, you know, whether it's Ronnie the gardener outside or whether it's, you know, somebody, you treat them the same. You say good morning to them. It doesn't matter who they are, what level, or you perceive level they are. They're all on the same level, and you treat them all the same. And I think that's really important. Really important. Yeah,
definitely. No, love that. So we talked about some of the highlights. What's your attention on right now, John? I know you've mentioned you're still actively buying. Is anything else your attention is on right now in terms of
so really what happened was, Terry, about 4 years ago, I got a bit fed up with all the advice people. I kept giving everyone advice for free over the years. You know, people being like, "Oh, John, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think?" And I thought, I think I'll write a book. So I wrote this book, my first book on just generally on advice on property developing and investing. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just put it on Amazon, and then people started talking to me about it. And then Property TV contacted me and said, would I like to go on there? So I did a bit on there, and then they said, oh, you need to go on these, you need to do these landlord shows and stuff. So I didn't know really what I was selling, but it's good fun, meet a few different people. So I did that. And then, oh, you've got to speak. When you're there, you need to speak. So then I spoke, and that seemed to go down okay. And it's just snowballed. So I've had from getting to the age where I could be retiring, I'm actually doing more now than ever. And so I've got a couple of TV shows that I'm involved in. Property Elevator, which is the 4th series, starts soon, and another one called Property Graduate, where the winner of the Property Graduate gets the opportunity to go out and buy a property of up to £1 million that I fund, and then we share the profit 50-50. So we've done the first year of the graduate, and Alfie Croft won it. And Alfie, I'm delighted to say, came and joined me in my business because he was that talented. That wasn't part of the prize, but that's a bonus, if you like, for him. I like to think it's a bonus anyway for him. He might think different. He might think different to that. Yeah. But and he's desperately seeking a deal that we can do together, because that's part of the prize he won. So and we've got the next series of that starting in May. So I've got Helen and Fiona, and my two very able ladies who helped me on that show. So it's a little bit, it's a bit like the Apprentice, obviously, but it's good fun, and we've had some really interesting people. So with that and the Elevator and my books, it's been a really fun time, and I'm really enjoying myself, and still doing deals, meeting a lot of interesting people. And we also started a joint venture fund where I'll invest in other people's deals, so they bring me the deal, and I'll put in the junior debt, and they put very little in, and we share the profit 50-50, and they get my experience during the project as well. And then I've got my seminars, which I don't do that many because I'm really busy, but the ones I do, I really enjoy. And yeah, so it's all go, Terry. Very busy.
Sounds like a fair play. Do you have an end goal?
Not really, no. I think I don't. It's interesting that perhaps I should have. You just got me thinking now, Terry. I'm a bit like one of those batteries, you know. You just keep going, you know. So I'm just keeping going. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. You know, I'm enjoying the fact that I'm meeting a lot of young people who want to get into property, and if I can help them do so, that's great. I've got 2 stepdaughters who are now both involved in the business as well. So you know, that's inspired me as well to push on a bit more rather than perhaps sit on my laurels, to push on and do more deals. So you know, while I'm enjoying it and I can make some money and cover my overheads, it's got to be all good, isn't it, Terry? Yeah,
you've got to enjoy what you do, man. Love that. So you have like targets within all the different businesses, or is it literally just pushing forward constantly?
Yeah,
I've got. Do that at your sort of level, or?
Well, yeah, we try and have some targets. I mean, we also own. I used to own Auction House UK along with my partner, and we sold that business 2 or 3 years ago. But we also, part of that was we also ended up owning Fine and Country in Norfolk, the estate agencies business.
All right, yeah.
And we've got 6 offices in Norfolk, which do very well. That's a really good little business. Of course, I always said I'd never get back into estate agency, having sold my estate agency when I was 24, and here I am. We've owned those for 10 years. I don't get involved on a day-to-day, but I don't quite understand, Terry, but I go and see the officers once a month or so if I can, once every 6 weeks. And it's always bacon roll day, and it's always my turn to pay, which I don't understand. And it's not Greg's. Oh no, we don't get it from Greg's anymore, John. We get it from the deli up the road.
The fancy one, yeah. It's twice the price.
And it's always my turn. Surprise, surprise.
I bet you there's no sick days on that day. I bet you everybody's in. Nobody's late either.
They've got a very motivated team. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. I just love the fact that, it's clearly not money anymore that drives you. You're operating at a high level, and you're still pushing, and you're still, because obviously I'm nowhere near where you are, but I've got quite a lot of property, and I think I'm doing well. A lot of people say I'm doing well, but then you get to a stage like when do you stop, or do you stop, or when's enough? But by the sounds of it, some people might just not. You just always push forward by the sounds of it.
Well, it's interesting. My business partner, who was with me for 30 odd years, Jeremy Scousel, he's just retired last year. He's an accountant, and he said he's had enough of me after 30 years. So there you go. So he retired. Yeah, he retired, and I've pushed. I'm busier now than ever. But I'm, I only want to work with nice people. I always have only wanted to work with decent people and honest people. And I think you do attract that. If you're that sort of person yourself, hopefully you do attract that sort of person. And, not everything's going to be a success. And everyone needs to accept the fact that, not everything is perfect. And not every, I don't know one development I've done that's gone absolutely perfectly. Really, in any shape and form. It just doesn't happen. There's challenges along the way. The biggest thing you need to do is de-risk the deal to start with. So know what you're going to do if it goes wrong. Have a couple of options, and if the worst scenario, if you can live with the worst scenario, then what are you got to worry about? If you can live with it, and hopefully you won't get to that worst scenario, you'll have the best scenario. But you need to be realistic. You need to be honest with yourself. And accept the fact that not everything is going to go to plan.
Love that. I think that's great advice again. Thanks, John. So just a couple of questions that have spiraled from what we talked about. Wealth of experience, wealth of knowledge. If there was anything you could, looking back, if there's anything you could do more of, and there's anything you could do less of in your career, what would those 2 things be?
Well, the obvious thing is to say, to make less mistakes and make more money, but that sounds 1980s. Now that sounds about 1980s crass, doesn't it? And my stepdaughter, who's just joined me to do my social media with the elevator show, I was doing a promo for that, and I was going to say, I started saying, I can make you rich on it. If you come on the show and the deal's good enough, I can fund it, make you rich. And my stepdaughter was absolutely horrified. She said, "You cannot say that now, John. This isn't 1980 anymore." So Thatcher's child, children or whatever. So anyway, so what was the question again? Oh yes.
So if you could look back, what would you do more of and less of?
Okay, I would buy it. I would have invested more in London.
Oh really? London, yeah.
Yeah, without question. Because at the end of the day, I didn't invest much in London because the money wouldn't have gone very far. I had, but looking back now, and I do some stuff in London now, and I'm involved in a couple of. I'm advising. I do a bit of consultancy as well, which is great. So I've got a couple of very nice clients in London, very wealthy, who have brought me in to help them on developments, and that's great fun. And I would have done more in London, I think, to be honest with you. I spread the properties, what I did across the UK, really, which has been very interesting. But I think, when I look at some of the people I know who just stuck in London, they've done much better financially than I have, probably. But there we go. So that's one thing I would have done more of. is buy in London. What's the other question? What was the other one?
What would you have done less of? Obviously, I know mistakes, but anything specific that
I think over the years I've been a busy fool. You know, I've spent a lot of time traveling around the country looking at deals. And I think when I look back now, I probably could have been, if I was a bit smarter like I am now at looking at deals, you know, most of the stuff I look at, I know I'm going to buy. Whereas in the old days, maybe because I was just enthusiastic, you know, you drive from Ipswich to Darlington to look at a deal, you get out the car and it's rubbish, you drive all the way home again. You know, it's taken a long way, and it's a long way to do it. And I know things have changed. It's a lot easier now with Google Street Scene, all these other things. You can do a lot of work. But my advice is always, especially if it's an auction property, always view the property internally before you decide to buy it. Always. You know, some people say, "Oh, it's cheap. I'll go." You know, I always look at it. Always. Inside. Yeah.
Love that. Great advice. Do the research up front. Yeah, man. Love that. So the show's called The Rags to Riches Show.
Yes.
But what does being rich mean to you? Because you can be rich in monetary terms, assets, time, relationships, loads of different things. But what does that, when I say that phrase, what does that mean to you, John?
I think it's relative. I think it's totally, utterly relative. And I know a few people who are properly wealthy. You know, they've got hundreds of millions. Are they happier than the rest of us? No. Are they paranoid about who their friends are? Yes. Is it difficult for their children to have a proper job because they've got so much money and they've got nothing to work for? Yes. So I don't think I don't think having hundreds of millions is the answer. I think there is a level where you go from, you know, wanting nice things. You know, most people start off wanting to buy a terrace house. They buy a terrace house, they buy a semi. They buy a semi, they buy a detached. They buy a bigger detached. They go from wanting to be independent and not need any help from anybody to buying a bloody great place where they need gardeners, housekeepers, all sorts of people. So they actually then they're reliant on many, many people to keep their lives going. You know, the very rich, you know, they go to their yacht's full of staff that they see twice a year or something ridiculous. You know, the whole thing gets ridiculous. Yeah. And I don't think that's healthy for anyone. I think there's a level where you need to want to work. You may not have to work, but you want to work, and you want to have that engagement with other people. And that's so important, that if you make so much money that you become totally paranoid and everyone just says yes to you. There's no clarity in anything you do. You can buy anything you want. What's the bloody point? I mean, fortunately, I've never been good enough to get to that position. So I don't need to worry.
Yeah, you don't want to be there.
I don't really want to be there, to be fair, but I'm not nowhere near there, by the way. So, you know.
Yeah, but I think that's a really interesting point, though, because some people might be, you know, there's a lot of highly ambitious people right here. They just want that, don't they? They think they literally want hundreds and hundreds of millions. Very few will get there, like you say. But is it really what you're thinking it is to get there? And you know some of these people, so obviously, you know, I'd take your advice on it. I think there was a program on this where they talked about this, didn't it? It was something like who would want the life of a millionaire or a billionaire? It was something along those lines, and it was about it becomes quite a hindrance.
I honestly think it for these people it becomes a massive burden. You know, you imagine it. The whole reason they got wealthy in the first place, successful, has backfired on them because they've got so much money. For instance, they don't live in the UK. They want to live in the UK, but they don't live in the UK for tax reasons. So they miss London, or they miss the friends, they miss the family, and they're spinning around the world because they don't want to live in the UK and pay a load of tax. The whole thing, you know, they didn't make so much money, they wouldn't have to pay so much tax, would they? Then they'd live in the UK with their family. So it just gets to a point where everything's too much, I think. And there is a balance. There is definitely a balance, and that balance is different for everyone. You know, some people ambition is to not have a mortgage on their home, which is wonderful. Yeah. Other people want a lot more than that, and that's fine too. It's how you get there as well. And some of the really, really successful people have been seriously ruthless to get there. That's what also you've got to remember. Yeah. Quick question for you, Terry. How many people in the UK homeowners don't have a mortgage? What's the percentage own their property cash?
As in it's unencumbered, yeah.
Unencumbered.
A percentage of the homeowners, I imagine it's, I don't know, 20%?
48%.
48%. Is that how high it is?
48% of people in this country own their own home cash.
Wow.
That's how wealthy we are as a country. Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know there's lots of people struggling.
Wow.
I'm not saying they're not. And it's direct, especially at the moment with the energy prices and everything else going up. It's a massive problem.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the market's going to slow down. It's got to slow. We've had the best start to the year since 2004, residentially. But I think that come third quarter, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough all round.
Yeah.
You've got extra taxes. You've got inflation running at probably 15%. I know they say it's 6, but it's only 6 or 7 because of RPI. The RPI covers so many different things, including things like TVs. You know, you don't go and buy a TV set every year, do you? So, and those TV sets have gone down in value or price all the time. So if you take all that stuff out and just have the purchases that people need to do every month to live, that inflation is probably 10, 15, 20%. It's huge. And that's a major problem. It's a major problem for any government, of course. You know, so you've got inflation, interest rates going up, and all the rest of it. So it's good. I think we've got tough times ahead.
No, fair play. You know, massively respect your opinion on it. Yeah, you've been around for a few recessions, so I imagine you probably know the signals by now.
I mean, there'll be people that disagree, and
yeah, it is a crystal ball, isn't it?
It's a crystal ball, but I don't think this year's going to be a disaster property wise by any means, but I think it's going to get much tougher.
Much tougher, yeah. Cool. Okay, thank you so much, John. I've really loved the episode. I've wrote quite a few notes there. I think it's packed with knowledge and lessons and learnings for all the listeners. If anyone does want to reach out to you, if they want to follow you, if they want to reach out for mentorship, and then
this is my big moment, isn't it, Terry?
This is the plug. This is the plug.
This is where I get told off. Did you say this? Did you say no? I didn't know. But that's because, you know, the nice thing about it is because you know, I don't need to. So, and with these property educators, some of them, you know, they're under big pressure. They've got to pay their mortgages. They've got to, you know, they need to. So I'm not in that position. So yes, I've got a Instagram, John Howard Property, I think Instagram. I've got a YouTube channel as well, which hopefully plenty of tips on there and different things that you can get involved in. And also I do some seminars. So I've got you go to johnhowardproperty.com. You go to my website. You can contact me anytime you want. I'm very happy to take any emails. And also, if you've got a property deal that needs funding and you need some help, then please talk to me.
Amazing, John. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Have a great rest of the day. Likewise. Thanks, John. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.